Okay, so welcome to our um, inaugural lecture series. I actually think this is the second one since last weekend. Our last month we spoke on IAYT's 300 hour um, health. Let's see, I guess it's Foundations of Yoga Therapy certification for health practitioners or licensed health practitioners. Um, Regardless, we are going to try to get together once a month on the last Tuesday of the month to talk about something of uh, applicable to what's going on currently. So, what I keep hearing, or what we keep hearing from many people, not only our own community, but outside the community, is how much uncertainty there is. It seems as if uh, there's a huge impact on so many different areas of life, government, finances, economy, etc. There's a lot of concern about how do I proceed with my life. So I thought we would talk about how yoga thinks about operating in uncertain times. But so first we'll do some chanting and then we'll go from there. Shri Krishna Bhagisha Yatisvarabhyam Samprapta Chakrankarna Bhashya Saram Shri Nuit Narengendra Yatau Samarpitasvam Shri Krishna Maryam Guru Varyamide विरोधे कार्तिके मासे शतताराकृतोदयम् योगाचार्यं कृष्णमार्यं गुरुवर्यमहं भजे कृष्णसूरिदयापात्रं ज्ञानवैराग्यभूषणम् श्रीमद्वेङ्कटनाथार्यं वन्देऽहं योगदेशिकम् श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः. Well, the the funny thing about addressing this kind of thing is that this is actually what yoga is designed for. What yoga has to say is that it's everything is uncertain. Being in alive is uncertain. Walking across the street is uncertain. Will there be tomorrow is uncertain. Uh, so the question is, from a yoga perspective, the point is that everything is uncertain, and we become more or less attuned to that uncertainty. And as we become more attuned to it, then maybe we have more stress, maybe we have more suffering and whatnot. So yoga's point from the beginning is, hey, everything is uncertain and there is no outcome that is guaranteed. And consequently, yoga's point is that focus on the process. Don't focus on the outcome, right? This is fundamentally the point. Of course, what does focus on the process mean and how do we do that can become quite involved, and there's a lot of things that are possible to say there. But on a very fundamental level, the question is, uh, you know, will my government still be a democracy in January of next year? Will my uh, will my vote count in November? Will the economy be such that I can still afford a loaf of bread in June? Will I have somewhere to live in March? Right? All of these questions are there. And And what yoga has to say very explicitly in the Bhagavad Gita is outcomes are not your jurisdiction. You have no control over the outcome. Your jurisdiction, everything that what you have ability to participate in is action, the quality of your action. Of course, if you're worried about what the outcome is, uh, this is not very helpful. Uh, this is not very helpful because uh, if I'm worried that I might not have some place to live at the end, starting at the beginning of the month, or if I don't know where my next meal is going to come from, etc. These are all outcomes that are quite strong and very pervasive uh, in their urgency, and consequently, to just say, well, go ahead and don't worry about the outcome and focus on the process, etc., and you'll be fine, uh, is not really a solution. So we should break this down a little bit more and say, what does yoga have to say about uncertainty? If we take a look at yoga's description of what you are, i.e., you are a living being, and what is the relationship you have with the world, what we see is that in yoga's presentation of all of this, the essential activity of life is perception. The very first thing to evolve is our ability to perceive, to discern something from something else. And that our perceiving always happens through a lens. So there is no direct access to the world. All all of our connectivity to other people, to our food, to what we wear, to where we live, to where we work, all of our connection to that is happening through the lens of our body and mind. So, what that means is our experiences are never just what the experience is in an outward objective sense. Our experiences are always going to be colored by the lens of our own mind, our own body mind. So it is truly a personal universe because I have my lens wherever I go. My lens is the thing that I look through. Whatever I see has those structures plus whatever I'm seeing. So, what is the lens? The lens is the lens is our previous experiences, our imagination, as well as our capacity to perceive. And what yoga has to say about this is that the capacity to perceive, mind has the ability to perceive accurately as well as inaccurately. So, what that means for what the color of the lens is or what the structure of the lens is that the history of our previous experiences is accumulating in an ongoing way. And that accumulation of past history is a guiding, depending on how refined the mind is, dominating force in how we are experiencing the world now. Right? So If I got bit by a dog, and that was a very strong experience, then every dog that I see after that, this memory of danger will be laid over the experience of dog. So, in child development, they talk about the role of the parent is simply to satisfy the need of the child so that the child develops a trust that their needs will be met, right? They get hungry, they cry, some food, some nourishment is provided. They get scared, they the adult, the parent provides some safety, some comforting. They're cold, they're wet, whatever the thing is. And if in the developmental process our needs were not always met, then rather than developing a trust that our needs are going to be met, instead we'll develop some uh, discomfort or some distrust at the when our needs come up. I don't know if it's going to be if it's going to be met. I don't know if I'll be okay, etc. So the accumulated history of our experiences play a strong role in coloring what is our perception of the current experience. Now, without sounding like, oh no, I have to go back to therapy and get all of my figure out how to get all my needs met and do all of this. Um, this is only one aspect, right? Our previous experiences play a role in coloring our current experiences. Another thing that is strongly playing a role is the quality of the mind. So if you think about, I am looking through a lens, and whatever is the coloring in that lens will be cast on the coloring of what I'm looking at. There's also another aspect to the quality of the lens, which is its, say, stability or its um, uh, how wavering it is. So, for instance, if you're trying to look through a pair of binoculars and you're on some kind of moving vehicle and your hands keep going like this, etc., it's very difficult to see anything with accuracy. If you're struggling to read a sign in the distance and you bring the binoculars up and this is the motion of it, then that may or may not be helpful, right? So, from a yoga perspective, the stability of the viewfinder is related to the quality of your system as a whole. And there are several directions that the system can go out of balance. One direction is uh, excessive movement. Another direction is, um, say, heat. And third direction is uh, excessive inaction, right? So when we're dealing with uncertainty, when we're trying to uh, manage or decide what actions should I take, the quality of our own system has a huge role in determining how well I evaluate this and how well I am able to um, how accurate I'm going to have at my thing. If I'm if my system is very active, it will be very difficult for me to discern with any clarity what is the proper course of action. There will be so many ideas. There will be so many possibilities. There'll be so many feelings all arising on top of each other in a way. If my system has too much heat, then my discernment is likely to be overly specific, impatient, controlling. Therefore, I'm going to struggle in determining what is the proper course of action because I'll want to be the one that is determining what the outcome is. And the lack of or the inability to be able to determine that will be even more painful and difficult. If I'm um, if I'm struggling to if I'm just completely overwhelmed and I'm struggling to get off my couch, to take any action, to think of anything, then it will be difficult to know how to proceed because I'm just shut down. Right? So yoga's take on how do I deal with uncertainty begins with what is the quality of my system? What is the quality of my mind? And everything that is given, everything that I do or say or think or how I breathe or the emotions that I have, all of these things are indicating my overall state. If we have some awareness of what those uh, are indicating, then we can choose practices which change the quality of our system and move it back towards balance. This is why, th- no, this is why when we think of yoga, we think of things that we're doing, moving, breathing, focusing, chanting, etc. Because all of those practices are things that are designed to change the way your system is functioning. And in fact, Yoga Sutras give us some ideas about what does a proper functioning look like and what does a improper functioning look like. A list of improper functioning is given in the first chapter in number 31. Suffering, negative attitude, uh, uh, physical dysfunction, short, shallow breathing, and inability, a distracted mind, inability to focus are all symptoms of a system out of balance. Right? Dukkha, dharmanasya, angamejapa, shvasa prashvasa, chitta vikshepaha. Right? So when we're dealing with uncertainty, it's really worthwhile to take a moment to look at, well, what is happening for me on an emotional level? Do I feel peaceful and calm? Or do I feel anxious and nervous or frustrated and angry or sad and attached, etc., like this, right? What is the perception of the event? Well, one of the interesting things yoga is saying is that if you are seeing the view in the circumstances in a negative view, in other words, you have the opinion that everything is going to hell or that the outcome is really cloudy and about to rain, etc. This has something to do with your state. You know, from yoga's perspective, even when things are really difficult, some positivity should still be capable of remaining in the mind. Then the third one, how is your system functioning? You know, when people get out of balance, they have trouble sleeping, or they have trouble digesting, or they have trouble eliminating, right? Or they get a rash, there are so many physical symptoms that arise when the system is out of balance. Then, breath. When the breath is short and shallow, we have it's indicative that our system is out of balance. There's also the idea that when the inhale is emphasized, so if you notice that your inhale is much longer than your exhale or stronger than your exhale, it's indicative that your system is not functioning at its optimum um, functioning. And the last one is we should be able to stay connected to whatever we'd like to be connected to. We have trouble. We have trouble with our uh, containment of the mind. In other words, my mother calls and I'm talking to her, or uh, I have a meeting with my bookkeeper or my accountant, and the whole time I'm in that meeting, I keep thinking about what did the Supreme Court do? What was the decision? Or what is happening with my neighbor? Why did they, why is there a sign out in front of the house? What were they thinking? Etc. So if I'm having an inability to stay with the topic and my mind keeps going somewhere else, this is called vikshepa. It's a, a scattered mind. There's not a directing and there's not a channeling. So to bring this back to the beginning of what I said about outcomes are not your jurisdiction, action is your jurisdiction. And what you want to try to do is stay with the quality of the action that you're making and let the outcomes be what the outcomes are. But so often, as we're in uh, taking an action, we keep thinking about, like, well, what will be the result here? And should I zig or should I zag? Because if I zig, then the outcome will be XYZ. But if I zag, the outcome will be ABC, etc. Right? So should I be, our attention is so focused on the outcome, right? So focused on the outcome. So if we're having that kind of inability to contain our the direction of our mind, etc., it means that our system is out of balance. And Patanjali, in a number of different places in the Yoga Sutras, gives us some uh, characteristics of what it will look like if our system is balanced. And those characteristics he then uses to talk about the practices that can change your system. Right? So, for instance, if we talk about um, a, the breath is short and shallow, right? One of the symptoms of our imbalance is that the breath is short and shallow. So later on in the text in the second chapter, number 50, he says that when the system is balanced, the result will be that the breath becomes long and subtle. Oh, this is a key for how I think about the way that I practice. How do I practice? Well, I want to intentionally lengthen my breath. How do I practice? I want to make my breath subtle and smooth. Okay, that informs our use of breathing techniques like ujjayi. How should we be breathing with ujjayi? Well, it shouldn't be so loud that it's a strain. It shouldn't be um, so strong that everybody in the room can hear it. It needs to be, it needs to be tangible. It needs to be relatable, but it should be subtle and smooth, and it should be resulting in my breath lengthening. This is giving us a key to how we work with uncertainty. The same thing happens in a different way in terms of physical practice. How do you move the body? What do you do in your physical practices? Well, in asana, he gives second chapter 46. He says, Stira Sukha Asana. So, what do we get? When you're practicing asana, the physical body must be comfortable and stable. Stira Sukha, stay stable and comfortable. This is directly opposite to the symptoms that happen when our system is imbalanced, out of whack. What are those symptoms? Uh, Angam ajayatva. The parts are trembling, right? So parts trembling, as I said earlier, can mean lots of different things like inability to sleep or just your digestion not working well, etc. So how do we change that? You change that by moving with intention and in a way that is stable and at the same time comfortable. The same thing applies on these different levels to emotions and to um, outlooks, attitudes. You know, if you can't be, uh, if you can't show up in a way that is friendly, compassionate, or supportive, then you need to put some distance between you and whatever it is that you're connecting to. This is second chapter excuse me, first chapter, number 33. Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upekshana. Patanjali says there are four attitudes that should be developed in terms of any situation. The first one is friendliness. Second one is compassion. Third one is support. And the fourth one is distance. And the point there is that if you can be, if you come to a situation and you can be friendly, compassionate, or supportive, then you can operate in the situation in a way that is uh, salmanasya, which is, it means a positive attitude or positive outlook. But if you're having difficulty being in the situation with any friendliness or any compassion, then, and you, definitely you can't support the situation, then you need to take some distance from it, right? So what is uncertain? Well, maybe your business outcome is uncertain, or maybe your relationship situation is out uncertain, etc. When you come into that situation, into the people who are participating in that circumstance with you, it's really helpful and useful to watch your own attitude. Can I be can I be compassionate? All right, our relationship is ending. We're breaking up, or whatever the case may be. Can I see the ways that this is hard on you as well, or the ways that, um, whatever my behaviors might have caused some suffering in your regard, and so I can be compassionate, or am I only pissed and want my chunk of flesh, right? And if that's the case, then I'm probably not, my system is not very well balanced. So that means that the lens that I am looking through is going to be coloring the situation, and I am going to have a lot of difficulty um, operating in a positive way there. What we get from this description is there are certain ways of practicing yoga that are designed to change your the way your system is functioning and move it towards uh, balance, move it towards optimal functioning, move it out of imbalance is probably a more a better description, a more accurate description. And that these things are in the qualities of the practices as they're described. What do you try to do? Make your breath long and smooth. How do you try to move? You try to move with stability and comfort. When you're practicing, make it complicated enough that it requires your focus, but not so complicated that your attention is drifting off and you're having difficulty staying with the practice. All of these things are designed to change the quality of the lens. And in changing the quality of the lens, they provide us a the most um, high probability for choosing an action or a course of response that is appropriate to what's happening. All right. This also means that if I have a series of negative experiences related to a specific subject, this is my memory, etc. It's very useful to um, figure out some series of actions that will provide me a different experience. You know, if I have, if I've had just a lot of heartache in my life and I've been let down again and again by the people in my life, etc., what is a way that I can start to have a different experience of relationship, right? And I'm not saying that this is the answer for everyone, but maybe it will be useful to get a dog, right? Because what happens with dog? Pretty much they love you no matter what you do. And they're there all the time. And they show up. And man, it doesn't matter what happened 10 minutes ago. You walk back in the room. Oh, you're here. I'm so glad you're here, etc. Right? So um, the point here is that when you're thinking about the lens and the way that the lens structures how your experience of the world, the two things that are mainly thinking about is number one, what is the state of your system? And number two, what is the history of your experiences in relationship to the subject, to the circumstance? Take the time to change your state. Take the time to connect to positive aspects of the situation. All right. Now, what are we going to do in times of uncertainty? So I don't know what is going to happen with the relationship. So uh, how do I act or how do I perform or whatnot, etc. How do I choose a course of action? First thing is about the quality of the mind and the body. The second thing is about determining my role, determining what is the participation that I have in the situation. What am I trying? What is it that is mine to do? Now, if we haven't done the first part of changing our state, stabilizing the lens, and the viewfinder is still all over here like this, etc. This second part will be very difficult, maybe impossible. So the point is, yoga begins with this abhyasa. Here's something for you to do. See what is my system? What is the state? Okay. Now we're going to try to introduce some qualities that stabilize that and bring it towards balance. Then the second question is, what is my role in the situation? Okay. So, in terms of a relationship that is in flux, maybe I'm a maybe I'm a one of the two parties. So then I have a pretty strong participation. But maybe it's involving my child. Well, how old is the child? Because what is the parent's action to do is very different at 2 months than it is from 2 years, than it is from 12 years and 22 years. And by the time your kid is 52, then you have a whole different relationship. There's a whole different uh, role that you're playing. What is your role? What is it that is yours to do? I know for a lot of people in the United States, um, governmental change and um, the way that uh, uh, the federal government is operating is very different than it has been in recent past. So there's a lot of questions about like, oh, there's so much uncertainty here and what is going to happen and whatnot. So the question is, well, what is your role? What is it that is yours to do? Now, if you're a prosecutor in in the Department of Justice, you have a different role than if you are a community organizer, than if you are uh, uh, a citizen that doesn't organize, right? So the question is, what is my role? Now, yoga's ultimate answer to what is my role, involves listening to your knowing. It's not just an intellectual understanding, right? So, you know, my kid is 15 and I am the parent. That means I am the legal guardian. Okay, but even within those facts, there's a broad range of responses. Do I do I allow my kid to make this decision and then reap these consequences? Or do I try to step in and I let them make the action, but I try to step in and prevent the consequences? Or do I step in before the action is taken, etc.? What is the role that I take? What is the action that I take? And from a foundational perspective, there is no intellectual answer to that. There is a quiet voice inside which has the answer. And how do you find that voice has a lot to do with what is the state of the state of your your system? What is the quality of your mind? Are you agitated? Are you um, balanced? And it also involves uh, the amount of time that you have. Like, do I have to respond immediately this moment? Or do I have a week or two before I have to make a decision? Right. So, um, but from yoga's perspective, the foundation is that you have within you the something that knows with a high degree of accuracy how to proceed, and that in order to find that, we need to take time to refine our body and our mind in ways that we said earlier, and to reflect on what is my role in the situation. And then there is a set of qualities that give us an indication that we have arrived at an accurate understanding of the action I should take. Right? So that set of qualities involves your uh, being at peace. Hlada is one of the words that is used to describe this. The opposite is that you need something to help you calm down. This is the action that I know I'm going to take, but I need a drink. Or this is the action that I know that I'm going to take, but I'm so anxious about it that I can't stay focused. I can't stay still. So, um, Mr. Deshagachar said, Atma Tushita, the soul, spirit, the self, with the capital S, however you want to describe it, is satisfied. It doesn't need to go out and find another answer, find something else. Um, with so essentially what we're saying is that there is a feeling set that is related to this accurate guidance from within, and that finding that feeling set uh, is helped enormously by being in balance or reducing the imbalances that we have, and is helped enormously by our practice